All right, 1 second here. All right, welcome on to this Q&A. Again, more welcome to this Q&A. While we are busy turning our lives upside down, cleaning for Passover. So people busy doing that, trying to prepare. So one thing we'll just mention, just about that is that a person has to remember dust is not chametz, right? Chametz, again, anything, any living product, anything made out of 5 grains that is going to, whatever, it's going to ferment, it's going to turn into chametz, right? Anything made out of barley, rice, beans, barley, rice, barley, spelt, wheats, rye, and oats. The rice, if you're Sephardic, you could eat it on Passover. Ashkenazim don't eat it, but the point is that dust is not chametz. Now that means, if a person wants to spring clean, okay, yeah, it's a good time to do it, right? If you want to do it, at the same time, but that has nothing to do with Passover. Not only that, the obligation of checking, of making sure you don't have chametz, let's say better, is you only have to check places where you can get to, or there is chametz. Technically speaking, I wouldn't have to move my oven, wouldn't have to move my fridge, right? Let's say, because it's too big, right? It's too big to move, to schlep, whatever it is. But someone will say, obviously, what if there's chametz there? Maybe there's spaghetti behind there. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe something fell there, right? Very well could be chametz. So really, I don't have to check it. Why not? I can't get to it. No possible way to get to it. Right? So that is the mainstream law. That you really don't have to check. Now, if you can, obviously it's better. You don't have to. Now again, what's the reason? You can't get to it. Right? A dog would never get to it. Right? No possible way. If, let's say, it's very hard to get to, but you have something there. It's okay. So you pull it out a little bit, spray it with something, right? Spray it with some caustic spray, whatever it may be, right? That a dog would never eat. So even if something could get there, they won't eat it, right? You could do that. Same thing in your car. Like if a person has a car and they clean it and they vacuum it, there's certain crevices you can't get to, right? Or very hard to get to, even though, let's say, a lot of vacuum cleaners or whatever you're going to use, right, to clean it out, they have these attachments. So they have these these, let's say, long, thin attachments which allow you to get into very small crevices. So let's say a lot of small crevices you can get into, but some you can't. So what do? And let's say, you have something there. It's probably, I wouldn't say it's size amount that you would be obligated in anyway, but it's probably you wouldn't eat it. Dog may not eat it either. So let's say you can't really get to it. It's too hard to get to. So you can take armor all or something like that. I don't know if they still make armor all, right? You take something that you clean it with, right? And spray it. That's it. That's all you have to do. You're gonna tell me you can't get to it, but you see it. Okay, but even if somebody could get to it, let's say, can't eat it. No one's gonna eat it. Right? Same thing. Same thing in a fridge, right? Or a freezer, even better. Can't, some freezers can't take apart. Can only get up to a certain point, right? Sometimes they have, small openings where you can't, it's very hard to get to. You can't unscrew it. There's no way to unscrew it, let's say. So you take a toothpick, spray it in there, get as far as you can. And that's it. Once nullification comes, after you do the checking for chametz, it's it. It's nullified. You can't, no possible way to get to it, right? So to be on the safe side, even if there are some crumbs, but there's no way really to get to it. So you spray it, right? You spray it with Fantastic or whatever, right? And that's it. You wipe as much as you can. You move on, right? It's something you can't get to. Now there are freezers, that part of it you could unscrew, right? Get underneath it. Okay, so that you should do if you can. If you can't, right? It's only a certain area you can get to, right? And underneath it you can't really get to, and probably caked in stuff there, whatever, probably. So you got two things there. First of all, no one can get to it. And second of all, if you could get to it, no one would eat it. So we're going to be ultra religious over here. When it comes to this type of stuff, because Passover we're ultra stringent in general. So there you can't get to it. You take a toothpick, you spray it with Fantastic or whatever. You get in as far as you can go, get off as much as you can, and that's it. Right? Now, if there are places that don't have chametz, you want to clean them out, you can clean them out. No one says you can't clean them out, right? At the same time, you're certainly not obligated. Why? You're not obligated because there's nothing there. You didn't eat. You didn't eat chametz. And even things that are there, they don't have chametz in it. So really, technically, just shut the cabinet and that's it. You don't have to do anything, right? And that's what probably a lot of people are going to do because they got other things, other more pressing things to do. But in that case, 100% you don't have to check. That's if if you're pretty certain nothing ever got up there, right? So anywhere in a person's house, apartment, whatever, that you are certain no chametz got to, that you didn't need chametz there, or not possible chametz got there, so you don't have to check it, right? If you have a doubt, obviously you should check it, right? If you're in doubt, then then that would definitely be a good thing. That would definitely be a good thing to do. And then again, what's the reason? Because you're not sure, right? But if you would be sure, you've never come, you've never brought food there. There's no possible way. There's no possible way there can be chametz. Yeah, but you have to know it for a fact, right? If you don't know it for a fact, then simple explanation is it's a doubt. If it's a doubt, I have to check, right? If it's a doubt, I have to check. That's the obligation, right? If I don't have a doubt, I know for sure. Okay, right? Then you don't have to check. If a person, again, let's make very clear: if a person wants to check anyway, wants to clean anyway, even though they're under no obligation, they're under zero obligation over here. They're under zero obligation. You don't have to. We're not even saying, well, you could be stringent if you want. Okay, we're not even saying that. We're not even going that far. And what's the reason? You don't have to check, right? Right? You don't have to check. No obligation, right? There is no obligation whatsoever. You want to clean, it, fine. You don't have to. So people get caught up in Passover in general, right? In general, for we're going to clean everywhere. Or places obviously don't have to clean, right? In other words, out of mind, out of sight. There's never, there's no chance. There's no chance chametz, ever got there, right? But a person has a car. Guess what? Chametz gets all over the place, right? Literally all over the place. So that you can spend a good hour, a couple hours, cleaning all over, right? Also, cleaning the car and throwing things away that shouldn't be there or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, what happens? At the end of the day, stuff can get everywhere. Remember once, one car I had, whatever, in the back, there was a seat, right, for kids to sit there, or even potentially adults to sit there, and underneath it is a what do you call it, spare tire. That's where the spare tire was. So I wasn't even going to think to check there. Right? I was going, come on, like, even if, a kid is sitting there, like, what are the odds they're eating something and falls underneath by the spare tire? So I wasn't even going to bother to check it. Someone said, yeah, maybe you should check it anyway. So I said, fine. Sure enough, there were pretzels there. Like, how they got there? They got there, right? So, you got to check. A car is caked with, people eat in the car, right? So you have to check it. You have to check all over, right? You're going to scrub it or whatever. You're going to take the mats out. You're going to scrub them or spray, let's say, Armor, whatever it is. On it, even if there was anything, ain't going to be anything now. And obviously, you're going to vacuum it up. Whatever, you got to make sure those crevices you can't get to, you don't have to worry about, right? All you have to do is spray it, right? Even if you see something stuck in there and you can't get to it, scissors won't get it out. It's too big. Toothpick's not strong enough to get it. Whatever it is, something caked in there. Okay, so you spray it. And that wouldn't be a problem. There's the whole question about books. I'll just throw out books for a second. No pun intended. Books, if they were used at the table or used while you were eating, then they have to be checked. Then for sure they should be checked. But even, there are major doubts over here. First of all, even if you check it, you're not going to find, something there big enough that'd be liable, right? You're not going to find something the size of the volume of an olive, right? Usually you're going to find, at best, you'll find crumbs. At best. And even if you do find crumbs, we're not going to eat it, right? No one's going to eat it. I don't even think a dog would eat it. I mean, a dog might eat it, but probably not. But nonetheless, any book. So there are two things there. One is that you probably don't have the size that you'd be liable for anyway. Second of all, even if you did find something, no one's ever going to eat it. Certainly, a dog's never going to eat it, right? So really, you shouldn't have to check, right? You shouldn't have to check. The Chazon Ish says, nonetheless, even though I have a lot of reasons, Chazon Ish says, Rav Avram B'Shai Karo, it's a blessed memory, Torah Giants, the last generation, according to everybody, started the community in Bnei Brak. He held that better to sell them, right? Better to sell them, right? In other words, you don't use them. Or if you want to use certain books on the holiday, make sure you check them, right? Go through them. You don't have to go page by page per se. You go through it quickly, see if anything comes out, right? Now, obviously, there are going to things that you probably ate over more. Some things you ate over less. But if you want to use, whatever books, good, right? There are people that they just sell all of them. They just, they didn't use too many books during Passover, except ones they check, right? So if you know which books came to the table, which books you didn't really use, right? Let's say so much, you don't have to check them. Now, there are people, what they do is they have a lot of books. They just clean out the shelves. They take the books out, clean out the shelves. They probably turn over the wood, so it gets evened out because usually it's warped on one side, most likely because of the heaviness of the books. So some of the shelves you can take out, very good. You spray it down, okay, and you put it back, right? Actually, make it neater. So I'm always actually I found a book yesterday. I was like, wow, I was looking for this. Didn't know where it was. Well, I found it. Now saw something else, whatever. I'll probably find it somewhere. Volume of something I was looking for. So see if it see if it shows up. But again, is there any obligation over here? Either you could just, whatever books you want to use, just check them beforehand, or you sell the whole thing. You don't have to bother. Right? You don't have to bother. But I always say once a year they get cleaned, right? At least the shelves get cleaned, the boards less warped because you flip them, right? Some of them you flip, others you can't. Some they're screwed in, so you can't take them out. It's always a good thing because you change them year to year. It also gives you a chance to what do you call it? To organize a little bit, get them get them a little bit neater, and can actually see what you have, right? If you have a lot of books, so even though it's very interesting, even though we can be lenient tremendously over here, we have two major doubts over here. But even though we have two major doubts, says the Chazon Ish, you should sell it anyway. Benchers, when it comes to saying grace after meals, those you probably should just sell. Those you shouldn't use for Passover. Right? They're probably caked in and whatever. Even if you would never eat from them or whatever, they came in contact with chametz. It's better not to use. Better just to sell. And then, you get a certain amount of benchers or whatever, and you only use them for Passover, right? Haggadahs you could use as a bencher. Yeah, you certainly could use as a bencher. So even if you don't want to get some benchers, let's say, for Passover, so you can use Haggadahs. Haggadahs, will have grace after meals in there. And a person, if they're going to eat a lot of matzah, they have to say grace after meals anyway, right? So it's there. And they have the blessing for mazonos, if you ate any like cakes or whatever, they're made out of matzah meal. So then it's in there also after the fourth cup of wine. There's blessing there. So you just insert for what do you call it? For something you ate, a flour or whatever, right? Or let's say better matzah meal or something like that. So you can use it. You use Agada. You don't have a problem. You don't necessarily have to get separate benchers. Because again, I think it's good. You get some separate benchers or whatever, and and use and use those. Kiddush cup, in theory, if a person wanted to, they should do Agala. They should put it, in boiling water, wash it out, not use it for 24 hours. Put it in boiling water, right? And then they can use it for Passover. I mean, it's certainly not, even though you use it for chametz all year round, right? It's not, it didn't get hit by hot chametz or anything like that, usually. So if you wanted to, you could use it all year round as long as you do Agala, as long as you boil it in hot water, or stick it underneath, and in total hot water, you can do that. Everything else, or just sell. Right, get a new Havdalah candle for what do you call it, for Passover. Use the candles for Passover. Let's say if you have some left over, as long as they didn't come in contact with any chametz, then you certainly could use them. Dish towels, if you wanted to, you could wash them hot water and bleach. Could use them for Passover. Some people have just separate dish towels for Passover. Tablecloth, same thing. Because again, as long as they're clean and they've been washed with detergent, you could use them for Passover. You for sure could use them for Passover. Now, what do people do? I think people probably have separate ones. Just, you put the other ones that came in contact with chametz, just put them away, even if they're washed, right? You put them away and you buy separate. Do you have to? No. That you don't have to do. Again, as long as it is, what do you call it? As long as it's washed, in hot water or even warm water with detergent, that's enough. Because even if there was chametz there, yeah, it's gone. It's gone, so it won't really matter. Either way. Other things though, you need separate utensils, right? You're not going to use the same. You're not going to use the same utensils. In theory, while we're just on this topic, in theory, if you had silverware, cutlery, depending where you're from, you can also kosher it, right? It's made out of metal, so you cannot use it for 24 hours. You could kosher it, do a go on it and use it, right? That wouldn't be, that would be a problem. Save money also, right? But in general, what most people are going to do is they are going to, they're going to buy separate. So you buy what you need, right? So when I was first married, since I spent 1 year outside of Israel. When I lived there for Passover, so we bought dishes. We bought dishes for during the year, right, and for Passover. Then every year we bought different things. We added on. I buy everything at once. We bought silverware. We bought some pots and pans, and some like we used a toaster for Passover, whatever. In general, but like a separate thing. Separate grates and separate thing for stovetop. Or I used a separate stovetop. Whatever. But each year, gradually we bought more stuff. And I mean, even if I had the money, it wouldn't make sense to buy all these things. You're not going to use them. No point to buy them. You're not going to use them, right? So what we did is just every year, just every year. So we bought new things, and over time, so acquired quite a few things. But to buy it all at once, yeah, it's certainly not cost effective, and B, probably don't need it. Probably don't need everything, right? But we bought it. We bought the basics. We bought some pots and pans, both meat and dairy. We bought a set of silverware and what do you call it? And dishes. I mean, we buy a lot, right? I don't. Actually, might actually bought like service for 12 probably, or at least service for 8 for sure. Right. But again, you could, person can buy service for 4. It doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be a lot. And even if you use glass for Ashkenazim, so even if you say that they're not doesn't absorb, yeah, you can use them for both meat and milk. So Ashkenazim would never use them for Passover. They wouldn't use them actually for meat and milk either. In other words, you could use them. You could just let's say use it for hot meat. Use the glass plate for I don't know for meatballs. So if you're starting, technically, what you could do is you can wash it off. After you use it, and the next day you can use it for dairy. Right. Next day you can use it for dairy because we hold it really doesn't absorb. Ashkenazim won't do it, right? Because you might make a mistake. But even for Sephardic people who will do it, they'll use glass for meat and milk. They will not kosher Passover. Like that far they won't go. But you'll tell me technically it doesn't absorb. You're right. Technically it doesn't absorb, should not be a problem. What's the issue? Right? What's the issue over here? Maybe it does. Maybe according to some it does. So you don't want to take that chance for Passover. Passover we're going to be, ultra strict over here. So you have, everything is separate, so you don't have problems, right? Again, and I'm not telling people. I wouldn't tell people now. Process of conversion, go out and buy all this stuff, right? Go buy a set of new dishes. Then you're gonna trade it up anyway. So, you can use your own dishes and just practice, right? You can just practice for, Passover. But when time comes, the person converts, so they should use, they should buy separate. Everything should be separate. Everything. At the end of the day, it gets. You buy it later, right? However much a person wants to use. But again, even after someone converts, it depends how much you need. If a person, wants to start buying all kinds of things, they can. Not saying not. Definitely not saying not. I mean, silverware and cutlery, whatever you want to call it. You buy, Corel dishes that, they don't cost a fortune. Here they cost a fortune, but in the States they don't definitely cost a fortune, but here they break. They say Corel never breaks. I can tell you Corel breaks. They definitely breaks here. But, you buy what you need. And then I would tell you every year, you add on things. You add on things you didn't have before that, you think you use or whatever. So that's good, right? But to buy everything all at once, I remember, when I was first married, so we took all these dishes and stuff to the mikveh. It took a while. Took a while because we bought Passover also, right? We put them away, obviously, didn't use them for the year, but there's a lot to do. You do it all at once, right? You do it all at once. But as we did, so we just did it pretty much, all at once. But again, in this case, also you buy what you need. You don't go overboard. You don't need to. If you want to, you can. I'm not saying not, but I wouldn't buy anything, after conversion until after conversion because you're gonna have to kosher it anyway, right? It's gonna have to be koshered anyway. So even if it's gonna be koshered anyway, no point to buy it now. So therefore, whatever, you buy when you can. You buy after conversion, but you buy what you need. If you want to buy more, you can. It's not, we just bought it step by step, whenever, we first married, so I didn't have any kids and I was invited out a lot, so I didn't really use that much. But still, over the years, once we started having like two, three kids, that was it. You don't get invited out anymore. So we started making our own Seder. It's kind of interesting making a Seder for like, my oldest one is like 5. Make a Seder for a 5-year-old and go through it. So whatever, it's pretty animated. We brought these puppets one year, acted it out, different things. So whatever, but there's so much to do. There's so much to do, but you don't have to get, you don't have to get, carried away. Let's say a person has, ceiling fan. Do you have to cut, do you have to clean it? No. Chametz got up there. But, if it's totally dusty, yeah, so you can clean it, right? Spring cleaning has nothing to do with chametz, right? Zero to do with chametz. You want to do it, you can do it. It has nothing to do with the holiday, right? People say, well, if I'm already cleaning, I'll do this also. Okay. But there's no obligation, right? So you're only going to do, you should only do what you really need to do, and, get whatever you need to be done. You want to do extra, you can do extra. But you certainly don't have to do it in any place that's never been checked. It's never been used. For chametz, you didn't, there was no chametz there, so you don't have to check it. Right? You don't have to check it. Is it good to get in the habit of checking? Yeah. Right. But again, if 100%, like, this place, wherever it is, your attic, like, do you ever bring a candy bar up there? Do you ever eat like chocolate up there or a cookie up there? Probably not. Right? Now, a person has a basement, yeah. So then you might have eaten stuff down there. Things might have spilled down there. Okay. Right. So then you have to check. Right. But depends where. Right. It definitely depends. It definitely depends where you're gonna check pants pockets. If you have pockets, coat pockets and this and that, you might have who knows what you might have in there. What treasures you might find. Yeah, so you can find parts of cookies there, you can find toffees, I don't know, lollipops, other things. Well, I mean kids for sure. Kids for sure, like, you gotta shake them out before they walk in the door while you're cleaning, just to make sure they don't have anything on them. Also, it's kind of strange. I saw people do not literally shake them, but you know, they before they walked in the door, they checked them like to make sure because certain places were already clean, so they wanted to make sure. And I was like, wow, it's kind of funny to do that, until I was doing it myself, right? So yeah. But in either case, you gotta, you know, as you're cleaning, you're thinking, did I eat over here? Is this a place I have to clean or whatever. But again, if you know for sure, let's make very clear, if you know for sure, you never ate there, right? Right? If you're sure you never ate there, um, if you know you never ate there, so good, so no problem. Right? Then you wouldn't have a problem with that. So those are general rules. Um, Yeah, let me take some questions here. 1 second. Someone asked, so by Ashkenazim, we don't eat kitniot. It's called kitniot. We avoid rice or any legumes, i.e. beans, right? Rice, beans, corn, lentil, mustard. It's considered what we call kitniot. So it's prohibited. The reason is a concern that rice would be confused with forbidden grains because they might have been mixed in with other grains, i.e., that it could be mixed in with chametz, or sometimes it was stored with wheat, right? During storage or grinding, so it was stored there. Maybe you might mix it up. Also, these things can be ground into flour. So things can be ground into flour. A person might make a mistake, right? Mix it with real chametz. Also, these things were, especially in Europe, they were stored and transported, right, with wheat and other forbidden grains, meaning they could be mixed up, right? That was the issue. So therefore, rabbis made a fence around the Torah here, saying that they want to make sure you're not going to eat any real chametz, right? We borrow spelt rye or oats, so they made a fence around the law by prohibiting what we call kitnios, means pulses or grains. Again, it's not actual chametz. I could sell it, right? If I had, let's say, peanut butter left over, I had, lentils or whatever. It's not pure chametz, so I could sell it. Ashkenazim could sell it. If you're Sephardic, yeah, they eat it, right? They get, they eat it. They don't see this problem, right? They don't see they don't see a problem with it. Regardless, not all Sephardic people not I see the trolls are back here. Not all Sephardic people ate rice on Passover. Usually if you were from Moroccan descent or from that part of the world, they ate rice. Right? If you didn't come from that part of the world, then most likely they didn't eat rice, right? So my father grew up in Jamaica, the island of Jamaica, and they never ate rice, right? He never ate rice. So I told him, tongue in cheek, you're not really Sephardic. You're not really Sephardic. Come on, if you didn't eat rice on Passover, like, but he didn't grow up in that part of the world. So in that part of the world, i.e., in the Middle East, in the Middle East, you're talking Morocco and places like that, Morocco, Tunisia, other places like that, they definitely eat rice on Passover. Like that, there's nothing to talk about. But not everybody, in other, Latin American countries and other places, they didn't eat rice on Passover, right? So it's not across the board that all Sephardic people took on to eat, um, took on eating rice on Passover. So, again, even by Ashkenazim, you can sell it, right? It's not a problem to sell. It's much less of a problem, and the reason is because it's not pure chametz, right? It's a stringency. The rabbis were stringent in such a case, right? Because something's get mixed up and other reasons, so therefore we don't eat it. But doesn't mean you can't sell it. You definitely could sell it. It's not a problem. You can sell it to a non-Jew. Yeah. So that is about rice. Passover to bring out the silver goblet. Yeah, you bring out everything. Yeah, even if you're not going to use it. Yeah, because why? We want to show we're free. So we bring out, even though the temple has been destroyed, which is true, but people will bring out their fanciest thing, on Passover and deck out the table, exactly for that reason, even if you're not going to use it, even if these fancy things you're never going to use, right? Doesn't matter. But you're decking out the table, showing how free we are, that, you're going to use the most expensive and nicest stuff on this holiday, even though technically maybe we should curb it a little bit because, we're still in exile and we are clearly in exile. The temple hasn't been rebuilt. Messiah hasn't come. So be that as it may, be that as it may, many people still do that. They'll, their Passover Seder, the finest stuff out there. Someone asked, cup used for the 4 cups has to be filled with, it has to be filled to the hilt, it has to be filled to the top, just like by Kiddush, right? Just by, Kiddush. But again, if you're using a small cup, it's not a big deal, right? The problem is if you're using, a big cup, you have to drink the majority. You have to drink the majority of the cup, not just a cheekful, but it should be filled to the top. Yeah, any cup you use should be filled to the top. So certainly for women, no obligation to drink wine whatsoever. They'll drink grape juice. For some people, even if they're only going to drink 3, 4 fluid ounces, they have a cup that big, right? Still, not necessarily such a small amount, but nonetheless, if they drink more than that, some people don't like the taste of it. It's too sweet. Drinking 4 cups is, hard enough. Yeah, okay, but certainly not obligated to drink wine, that's for sure. If they want to, they can mix. They can mix wine and grape juice. That's not a problem, right? But certainly women and children certainly can drink grape juice. For some men, they don't like grape juice. Sorry, they don't like wine. Even wine that doesn't have so much alcohol. Even it's got, let's say like Buzz, it's got 5%. Right? I think minimal amount that has certain wines have like 3%, 3.5%, something like that. That's the status of wine. So it needs at least 3.5%, I think. 3.5%. I think something like that. So therefore, so that's like the least amount. Least amount. So there are people who don't like, they don't like wine. So drinking anything more than that, to be like 10%, well, like then first of all, they're not gonna like it. It's gonna be hard to go down, and it's gonna give them a headache and other things. So, if they drink lighter stuff, it's better, right? It's better. Should they drink that or grape juice? Really, they should start with wine. Even if it's much less, right? Even if it's like 5%, at some point if they want to mix it with grape juice, they can. Right? Women don't have any obligation whatsoever. Let's make that clear. They can drink grape juice. Right? They can for sure drink like grape juice. But should it be filled to the top? Yeah. Is it wrong to buy and hold till after the dunking? You could. You could hold them. You could hold on to them before, right? You could do it. Let's say a person, I don't know, got money back from Uncle Sam. They got money back from Uncle Sam. Okay. So they want to use that money, to invest in that. Can they? Yeah. Can they just put it aside and never use it till after conversion? Yeah, they could. They could. Let's say, I don't know, it's a cheap sale, let's say. It's a really cheap sale and good stuff. So better, no better time than the present. So they buy a lot of stuff. And they put it away and don't use it until, they're not going to use it until after conversion. Can you do it? Absolutely. Yeah, it's not a problem. Right? Should you do it? Depends on the person. Right? You're gonna have stuff you're not gonna use as long as you have space for it. You can do it. Right? But again, if there was a big sale, why not? Yeah. You just leave it, just put it aside till after conversion. So peanut butter is fine for farming, yes. Yes, that'd be good for them, right? It's kosher Passover, it should be, right, for them, so they could eat it. A lot of things on the market that people, the rabbinical supervision changes because it's only for, let's say, Sparta. It's only for people that says on the package for people who eat people who eat legumes or whatever, right? So the main rabbinic supervision on this product they take off because it's for Ashkenazim, right? They're not going to approve it for Ashkenazim because Ashkenazim won't eat it, right? So it's only good for Ochle Kitnio. Now, one other thing I'll mention, which I think is interesting, and that is there's a whole question about cottonseed oil. If cottonseed oil is a derivative of, it comes from cotton seeds, which would be kitniyot, right? Three Ashkenazim shouldn't use it, but some say the cottonseed oil is a totally new product, right? It's totally, it comes from cottonseed, okay, but the end product is totally different than what it started out as, right? So in that case, you can eat it, right? You can eat it on Passover. Now, the custom in Jerusalem is not to eat it, right? Is not to eat anything made with cottonseed oil. So there are many, many products in America today. Can't say for Europe, I'll speak for America because that I know because I was there. And there are many, many products. I mean, they got a lot of products for Passover. Got a kosher for Passover. I'm not going to vouch for how they taste, but let's just say it's kosher for Passover. Vast majority of things have cottonseed oil in it. Now, if you hold like custom in Jerusalem, there's a lot of things you can't eat. There's a lot of things you can't eat. So when I was in the States, I ate like I was here. I didn't eat very much. You know how many different things you can do with the potato? You know, potatoes, different forms, chicken, meat, a few other things, but like anything processed, so many things. I mean, also very expensive, but you have cookies, you have cakes, you have other things that are made with cottonseed oil. Salad dressings, let's say. I'm not saying all these things are healthy, it doesn't matter, but there are many, many, many products made with cottonseed oil there, right? So I didn't rely on it, and I didn't eat anything that had cottonseed oil in it. I would say the vast majority of Americans, Orthodox Jews in America, they eat things with cottonseed oil. Now there are people that do not, that on Passover itself, because of the stringency of Passover, they make just about everything from scratch, right? They don't eat anything processed. So that's much more for pain. You're gonna buy a lot of tomatoes and a lot of this, and a lot of that. They make everything from scratch. They won't eat anything processed. Yeah, there are people stringent like that. So I wouldn't say most people are. There are some, but I wouldn't say most people are. You are going to rely on this rabbinic supervision, whatever the rabbinic supervision is. You are going to rely on. Very good. So at the same time, I would say that if you're in the States, you can rely on it. And eat things with cottonseed oil. Right? The custom in Israel is not to. Custom in Jerusalem isn't to. Right? But I didn't see too much difference eating in America and eating when I was in Israel. It was the same. Right? It was totally the same. Why was it totally the same? Because I didn't eat anything with cottonseed oil. Right? And so that restricts you in a major way. In a major, major way. Because a lot of things are made out of cottonseed oil. So, a person probably should eat cottonseed oil. Things with cottonseed oil in it. That's what I would say. That's what I would say on that. But I would say most people do. Most people in the States rely on it. Here they don't. But, most people there, certainly do rely on it, and that's what they do. So they can eat, many more things, spend a lot more money if they have it. I'm not sure it's worth it because some of the Passover food does taste awful. I mean, I remember one year it didn't have cottonseed oil, but I bought cereal. So maybe see how the cereal tastes. I couldn't even eat it. Like it was just barely edible. I don't know why, but it was bad. It was just bad. So I'm saying not everything is bad, but whatever. Passover food is what it is, and you're always hungry, right? It's always so much chocolate you can eat, right? But that's what it is. And people don't like to eat a lot of matzah because it does a job on their stomach. That's also an issue. Also an issue for some people, so they're always hungry, right? In general, so it's kind of like we'll have to make a big distinction there. It's kind of like eating Chinese food, right? Imagine eat all this Chinese food, and 10 minutes later you're hungry, right? No matter how much you eat, you're still hungry, right? So that's kind of like Passover in a nutshell. Yeah. How can someone celebrate Passover prior to conversion? So the question really is, how could you celebrate any holiday? Yeah, it doesn't apply to you. True. You weren't in Egypt. True. Your soul's on Mount Sinai, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Right? He didn't come out of Egypt. So really, the halacha is that if you're in the process of conversion, you can celebrate it. You have to do something on purpose to break the festival, right? You have to do something on purpose to show you're not keeping it like a Jew, just like on Shabbos. The thing is, there's a problem, which, Rabbi never found a solution, that inviting a non-Jew for the Seder or for a festive meal, not on Shabbos, is a problem. Right? The problem is maybe you're going to add extra food for them because you're allowed to cook on a festival, right? If you ever get the question based in, right, in the rabbinical court, what's the difference between Shabbos and a festival? There are two differences. One is on Shabbos, if you have pre-existing flame you can cook. Even if let's say took a slab of meat, you wanted to have meat on the festival. Yeah, as long as I had a pre-existing flame, right? Let's say the stove, you left the stove on. I can put it in a pot, I can put it on a plate, I can put it on a pan, whatever it is. I could cook it. Right? 100% I could cook it. Not a problem. Not a problem, because you're allowed to cook on a festival. Shabbos, you can't do that. Shabbos would be forbidden, even if you had a pre-existing flame. Right? The other thing is I'm allowed to carry. Right? Even without an Eruv. Now, it doesn't mean I can carry whatever I want. It has to be something I have usage for. Right? My glasses, tissues, prayer book. I don't know. Something that has usage. But so, problem is, if non-Jew's going to come, you might add something special for them. You might make something on the holiday for them. Right? That's the problem. That is the problem. So I'm going to say, okay, so if that's going to be a problem, let's say all the food's already made, which is probably the case. So if all the food is already made, very good, all the food's already made, then what do? Then you should have a problem. Yeah, but there's a decree over here. The decree is you can't invite them, period. Because of this reason. Even if this reason doesn't apply, who says it's the reason? Right, as my Rabbi would say. Right? So even if it's not the reason, Rabbi's going to give 150,000 different reasons. They didn't tell you all the reasons. Right? So even if that's one of the reasons, you can't invite a non-Jew. Right? You can't invite a non-Jew because this might happen. You tell me maybe all the food's cooked, good. Maybe all the food's cooked, you won't have a problem, so you never do it for them. Different issue. Right? Doesn't change anything. Doesn't change anything over here. So the leniency is where a person could go is how they're going to learn. How are they going to know how to do Passover Seder if they've never been to one? How are they going to know how to observe a festival if they've never been to one? They've never seen a family, how they do it, this and that. So there is a leniency if they're in the process of conversion. If they're not in the process of conversion, it's a bigger problem. Bigger problem. If they show up on their own, that's one thing. Yeah, inviting them is a different problem. Right? It's a different problem. So my Rabbi had different ways of trying to get out of the problem. And in the end, he said he didn't find any permissibility. He said it's forbidden. Right? Forbidden to invite, a non-Jew in the process of conversion. Now, others would say they're in the process of conversion. So they can go. So there are leniencies over here. He didn't find any, but right, there are leniencies. So I asked him once, someone involved in Kyiv in a certain place doing outreach. And I asked him, I said, what do you do about non-Jews and festivals? Yeah, so he told me this is what he does. Or this is what he did, let's say better. What he did was, he would say, you're not invited? Right, don't even think of coming, but we're starting at 8:00. Right, so you're telling them they're not invited. Yeah, that's what this person did. So I asked my Rabbi about it. I said, does that hold any weight? He goes, no. That shouldn't be done. That's like inviting them. It doesn't get you out of the problem. Right? But again, there are lenient opinions over here. He happens to be not one of them. Yeah, but there are there are people that will say you can invite. And if you want to get out of the problem altogether, in that sense, then you make sure all the food is cooked. You're not going to make anything else, no matter what. Right? So if all the food is cooked, it's not a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. We just said it's a decree. Maybe you're going to add for them, but let's say you're not going to. You're not going to. Okay, so if you know you're not going to, then you can take it down a level. So there are leniencies here. Rabbi didn't find any, but there are people that are lenient, so you could celebrate it, right? You could go to people to learn what it means, to keep the holiday and go to a Passover Seder, or do it on your own, right? You can do that, and you should do that, right? What's the reason? Because otherwise, how are you gonna know what to do when you're Jewish? Yeah. So again, you have to do things obviously on the holiday to break it. You have to show you're not keeping it like a Jew. That's for sure. Yeah. Anyone in the process of conversion, 100%. Right. But the problem is the person's not in the process of conversion. That's different. That's a worse issue. Because then they don't have intention to convert. Say, maybe they will, but we don't care if they convert or not. It doesn't matter if they convert or not. They can say non-Jew and that's it. Right? Someone who's definitely going to convert and they are in the process and blah, blah, blah. So good. Right? So good. So they should celebrate. They should try and go somewhere and celebrate, and see what it is and see what people do and this and that. They should go. Right? They should prepare. Now, some will do more, some will do less. It's a daunting task. Passover is, it's a very daunting task. Cleaning is a daunting task. Turning over, that's when your house is totally upside down because you got to take all the chametz steak, pots and pans and this and that. You got to move them, put them wherever you're going to put them. When you sell them, they're going to take all the Passover stuff and bring it in, right? But you're not really, ready 100% to make everything kosher, or maybe some of it is, some of it is. It's like upside down. That's when you feel it. Like you can't walk around, boxes all over the place. The place is a total mess, and you have to go shopping. Where am I going to put everything? You have to frost the fridge, the freezer, this, that. It's a mess. That's what it is, right? But it's got to get done either way, right? Either way, the whole thing has to get done. So now the question would be, when should a person start preparing? Right? How much of it should they keep? As much as they want. Some will do more of it, some will do less of it. I mean, it's overwhelming. That's no question. That's no question. But you know what? Passover is overwhelming, no matter what. For anybody, it's overwhelming. Yeah, if a person's older, it's harder. If a person's younger, let's say they have kids, it's harder. Right? Especially here now, because they finally decided to cancel schools now until, it's not really going to matter because Passover's coming next week. They would have stopped school anyway right now. But you're trying to do things. You got kids at home. It's not easy to send them anywhere to babysitters and different things. Everyone else has to clean. Right? So you got kids around, most likely bored and who knows what, then it's in the best of times it's hard. Right? The only benefit is you get a little bit of break when you send them out. We send them out, either the babysitters or who knows what, so you can get work done. Right? But yeah, so it's it's overwhelming. It's supposed to be overwhelming. Right? This is what Passover is. Right? So, a person feels like, the body aches, their bones ache, their hands are scrubbing this and that. And, most people don't feel this. That's not true. People feel it. Everybody feels it. Right? There's stress, there's tension, there's, Passover, everything Passover costs 3 times the price. You got that issue. But you're trying to do everything, all the other things also. You're trying to clean. You got to learn a little bit about the holiday. You're trying to do all the other things. It's a hectic time, right? It's a hectic time. And then once everything's done, you turn over, you start to cook. And then the holiday goes. Like 6 days later, it's over, right? So you work like a crazy person. You did all these things, cost you X amount of money, whatever it is. And it's over, right? And then it's over. But it's a lot of tension. But that's normal. So a person shouldn't think, oh, it's only me, right? I'm the only one having this difficulty. Forget about it. Everybody's having difficulty, right? That's what it is. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes not, right? But things have to be planned out. You have to have a chart. What do I have to clean? What have I done? What haven't I done? You got to make a list. People have lists and lists on top of lists and who knows what, right? But that's, person shouldn't think it's only me. because this is all part of the fun, right? It's all part of the fun. Yeah. So therefore, a person's going to keep as much or as little as they want. Depends where they're holding in the process, right? But you got to remember one thing: after conversion, whenever the conversion's done, now it's for real, right? So you have to absolutely know what to do and how to do things, right? So obviously, better to see it in action. You see what people do, you see how they do it, right? It's you got to juggle. It's not an easy thing, right? Passover this year is on a Wednesday, right? So go straight into Shabbos if you live outside of Israel. You got Wednesday to Thursday, Thursday to Friday, then you got Shabbos, right? So to make an egg tavshilin, right? Take an egg, you take you take a piece of matzah. You have to say this blessing, right? Before the holiday comes in, but you can't cook from the festival to Shabbos. So what do you do? So how are you allowed to cook Friday? You want to cook stuff for Shabbos. You're not gonna cook it beforehand. So you want to cook, you want to cook cholent. You want to cook chicken, let's say, whatever. Soup, whatever it may be. You want to cook for Shabbos because you can't cook it on Shabbos, right? So you have an Erev Tavshilin, very good. Erev Tavshilin allows you to cook, right? Allows you to cook, but then you have to have other meals, right? You have to have two meals on the festival. One at night, one during the day, and then you go into Shabbos. So you can't eat your meal too late, on Friday because you have to have an appetite for Shabbos. Then you go into Shabbos, right? So for us, it's going to be kind of funny. You have one day, you have the Seder's one day, at night. Then you have the next day, right? So then you make Havdalah. Then you make Havdalah after the first, Thursday night, next Thursday night. Very good. And then Friday's preparing for Shabbos. So even though it's really part of Chol Moed, it's part of the intermediate days. Very good. I go out and sightsee and do whatever, but it's you got to prepare for Shabbos, right? You got to prepare for Shabbos as well. So at the end of the day, maybe it's easy to go 3 straight days and cook whatever you're going to eat on Shabbos, right? On Friday, then you have you have part of a free day, but it's not really free, right? It's not really free. Why? Because you're going to prepare for Shabbos. Yeah. So someone asked to cook a pre-existing flame on the festival. Yes. Now someone will say, but what if I have a pilot light and I light it? I think it's forbidden. Right? If I remember correctly, lighting from a pilot light, I think should be. Let me just double check here. I think it's if you have a continuous burning pilot light, you could. That's considered transferring a flame. Yeah, that you could. So you could turn up a flame, raise the flame of gas if you wanted to. Got to be careful to turn it down because if you turn it down, you might extinguish it. Right, that you can't do. But as long as you have a pilot light, many say you can. All you have to do is turn on the gas stove, and if the pilot light's already lit, so you don't have a problem. If it's electric ignition, you got a problem, right? If you got a constant pilot light going on, right, that's a different issue, right? That would be all right. That would be all right. But if not, then it would be a problem. But as long as you're correct, as long as you have a pre-existing flame, right? You put a blech over. Let's say buy a blech for Passover, right? You buy a piece of metal covers it. So as long as you have the flame on, it's covered. You can cook. Not a problem. Most people don't want to cook. They'll cook before the holiday for the sole reason that they don't have to cook on Yom Tov. I might taste tastier. It might be tastier. Okay. Well, why doesn't a person want to cook in general? Because it's a festival. They want to enjoy the festival. They want to, make things and, whatever. They could. I'm not saying you can't. Saying most people probably don't want to. But they absolutely could as long as you have pre-existing flame. Can everything be cooked prior to the holiday and then put on the blech to warm? Yes. 100%. Right? That's not a problem because there's no problem to cook. Right? You don't have to, you can put it directly on the blech, on the hot plate. Not a problem. Right? Or on the stove where the flame is lit. It's not a problem. And the reason is because you're allowed to cook. So therefore, since you're allowed to cook, I want to put it directly on the I can put it directly on the flame if I wanted to, because there's no prohibition to cook. If it was Shabbos, that'd be a different issue. If it's already cooked, you got to reheat. You can't, if you're Sephardic, I can put it directly on the hot plate because it's already fully cooked. If I'm Ashkenazic, I can't do it. I have to put it on an upside down pot or an upside down, let's say, what's it called, aluminum pan or something like that, because otherwise it looks like cooking, right? That difference of opinion between Ashkenazi and Sephardic people on, on Shabbos. But everyone agrees, even if you have pre-existing flame, yeah, even if let's say the blech is on, it's hot enough to cook, everyone agrees you can't cook on Shabbos, right? It's only about reheating that we agree you're allowed to reheat. The question is, can I put it directly on or not? That's the question. The person made fish and there's a lot of there's a lot of sauce and it congealed, so that's a problem. That's a problem to reheat it, right? On Shabbos. Festival wouldn't be a problem. On Shabbos would be a problem. Why? Because anything that is liquid that got ice cold, yeah, doesn't mean it's frozen, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It got cold, then I can't reheat it. Why? Because if there's a lot of juice there, then it's like I'm recooking it. I'm starting a new cooking process. That makes it forbidden. If there's a little bit of juice there, it's one thing. If there's a lot of juice, it would be what do you call it? It would be it would be a problem. But any solid, let's say kugel, right? You take kugel or I don't know, meat. You take meat that's already cooked. Yeah, so that's not a problem. Absolutely not a problem on Shabbos to reheat. As long as it's cooked. Once I deal with the liquid, that's the problem. Right? If it's a little bit of liquid, I don't have a problem. If it's a lot of liquid, you have a problem. Right? It depends how you made the fish. Right, in general. But as we said before, on a festival, as long as you have a pre-existing flame, cook as much as you want. So not a problem. You cook from scratch. You take a piece of meat, slab of meat, put it in there, put, I don't know, potatoes, onions, whatever. You want to cook it up into a stew? No problem. Right? Not a problem as long as you have pre-existing flame. Someone asked, can we take any room temperature drinks and pour these over ice for refreshment? Yes. Yes. But you're not allowed to put ice into a cup and just let it melt. If you're going to put ice in the drink and it's going to melt anyway, it doesn't matter. That's all right. That 100% is all right. The reason is because it's made to melt. You don't have a choice. But to put ice in a cup just for the sake of the ice to melt and no other purpose, that's a problem. That would be forbidden. And some people will do is they'll take, let's say you have, I don't know, juice or soda or whatever that's warm, and it's not going to get cold so fast. You put it in the fridge. Some people put it in the freezer. Now, the only issue with putting it in the freezer is you don't want it necessarily to get so cold it's going to be frozen or it's going to, make ice. That's a problem, right? But if you put it in the freezer for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, and it gets colder, then you're allowed to do, but you got to be careful not to leave it in so long, right? Because making ice, unless it's like an absolute necessity, is forbidden. Because you're creating, you're creating you're taking water and you're making it into a new entity, right? If it's if it's a big need, let's say in the summertime, so you have stuff that's cold, but you want it ice cold. You want it like really ice cold because it's like 100 degrees, or it's like 30, 35 degrees Celsius, or whatever. So you want it really ice cold, but you don't have enough ice. So what do? You make ice. Yeah, that is that called a necessity? Depends who you ask. For some people, for them, it's a necessity. They have to have ice. Now, if it's an ice maker and it's making it automatically on Shabbos, that's a problem. You can't use the ice. But I'm saying, if you had ice trays, right? Poor man's ice maker, you have ice trays. Okay. So you can use ice trays. You could put water in it and make ice. Again, it has to be a real need. It has to be a big need. So today we live in a cream puff generation. You might say that's a big need. There's some people who won't drink, even if it's cold, they won't drink it without ice. Even in the winter. They won't drink things without ice. Okay. Yeah, so for them, it bothers them. And if they didn't have ice or they didn't have enough ice, so for them, that might be okay. right? It has to be a big need, though. It's got to be considered a big need. Would we consider that a big need? Depends who. Depends who. Some people, it's a big need, right? But that's what the halacha is. It's gonna be like a serious need, right? So you gotta be, even if you put, let's say, soda in the freezer, you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful it doesn't make ice, right? You want to get a cold, okay, leave it there 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You know, you gotta keep checking it. You want to be careful it doesn't make ice, right? You're gonna say what happens if it did. Okay, so it did, but you want to be careful over here. Certainly want to be careful over here. Yeah. Any other questions? Right. Also, by the way, having a pre-existing flame, if you're going to light candles Friday night, right, or the second night, right, Thursday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, you have to have a pre-existing flame as well. So what people do is they'll use a candle like a Yortzeit candle, like commemorating the death of a parent, or God forbid, a spouse or a child or whatever. They have these candles, these paraffins that are like congealed, right? It's congealed wax, it's congealed oil, right? Made into wax. And they have these things that last for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, right? So you take some of these, let's say you take one of these things that lasts 72 hours. It's in a glass, nothing's going to happen to it, right? You can put aluminum foil around it, underneath it, you can put aluminum pan there, but nothing should happen. I mean, the worst thing can happen is it goes out, right? That's the worst thing that could happen, but in general. So that's going to be lit for, let's say, 72 hours. So I can take a candle and light from that Yortzeit candle in order to light candles for Shabbos, right? And for the festival, right? So Thursday night, you light from that. Friday night, you would light from that, right? But you got to be careful Friday night and even Thursday night that when you light it, whatever candle you're lighting from, you can't put it out. So you have to have like either a candlestick to put it in, or what some people do is before the holiday, they'll make aluminum foil, they'll take aluminum foil, and they'll put it underneath the candle. So the candle will go out by itself, but you're not allowed to put it out, right? So the candle lighting the other candles, what are you going to do with it? You can't blow it out, certainly not. It'll go out eventually, but you can't put it out yourself. That's the problem. So those 2-3 day Yom Tov candles are awesome. Yeah, that's what they do. Right? That's the whole point. Right? So you don't have that problem. Now there is one issue though. Let's say you had a person at a Yortzeit during the holiday. Yeah, so again, someone they have an obligation to mourn for, mother, father, sister, brother, God forbid, a child or a spouse, to mourn for. Okay, what if they forgot to light the candle before the holiday? So that's a problem. To light it even from a pre-existing flame is a problem. And the reason is because it's called Lo Shava B'Kol Nefesh. It's not equal for every person. Because most people are not nevelis. They're not in mourning, right, on that day. Right? And most people are not in mourning in general. So if that's the case, then many rabbinic authorities hold if you didn't light the candle before the holiday, you can't light it on the holiday. It's forbidden. Right? Because it's not equal for everybody. So if it's not equal for everybody, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. Tell me I got a pre-existing flame. Okay. But I have something else that pushes that off. Right? That's not equal for everybody. So even if I have a pre-existing flame, who says I should do it? Right? Who says I should do it? That is the issue. Someone asked, we drop the match on the silver plate and it goes out by itself. You can do that. But again, it's easy to light with a candle, no, with a match, because you have to light a lot of matches, right? But you could light, depends how many candles you're lighting, right? If you're lighting one candle, yeah, you can do it with a match. You can do it with a match, and as it gets close to your hands, you're about to get burnt, so you can drop it, right? But you can't put it out directly. That's the point. Cannot put it out directly. Listen, you can use candles also that, the last 8 days, I don't know, 8 days, 9 days, whatever. You can have these big things. They have the, first week a person's in mourning, they have these 7-day candles, right? For a week. So it stays lit the entire time. Yeah. But keep in mind, let's say you had a candle for that, right? For commemorating someone who died. You can't use that candle for anything else. Yeah, that's the problem, to light from that candle. But light from any other candle should be okay. It's just that if you're gonna light with a match, then you gotta let the match go down, 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 and then kind of drop it. It goes out by itself, right? So that would be okay, but to put it out 100% is forbidden. Can I light a yurtzai candle for my Jewish day? Why not? But you should do it before the holiday. So if it's the first night of the holiday, let's say, then good. So light it before the holiday, right? Let's say the second night, or it comes out on Shabbos, right? It comes out on Shabbos, so really, you should probably get a candle that lasts 3 days, so then you don't have the problem. You just light it before the holiday, right? It wouldn't be a problem, right? But there is an issue if you got to light it before the holiday to light it on the holiday. Many say you shouldn't light it. Many say you definitely shouldn't light it for that reason, because it's not equal for everybody. Yeah, you need 2 yurtzai candles. Yeah, no, they're not so expensive. Not so expensive. So definitely good to get. So here, we're going to use it on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah everywhere is 2 days, but every other holiday is 1 day. And there are times that the holiday can be, let's say, on a Thursday night. Then you have 2 days. You have Thursday night, Friday night. Friday nights, you have Shabbos, and you go into Shabbos. That I think, for when I was in the States, that was the hardest thing. 2 days or 3 days. It's whatever, it's they're long days. A, B, they are, I mean, they're the fun days also, but they are, there's it's a lot of preparation. It's double the amount of preparation than you would normally have to do if if a person lived here, because it's only 1 day. Right? All the holidays are 1 day except for Rosh Hashanah. But everywhere Yom Kippur is only 1 day also. Yom Kippur was never 2 days. Even if we have Yom Kippur should be 2 days. 2 days fasting is going to be very hard. So it's only 1 day. But every other holiday, the beginning and the end, let's say Passover and Sukkot, outside of Israel is 2 days. Inside of Israel is 1 day. But again, here it can go into Shabbos, right? That's not so common. It happens. By Rosh Hashanah for sure, but sometimes by other holidays it can happen. Right, if it comes out, let's say, on a Thursday night. There are holidays that can come out Thursday night, so you can have that, right? But it's not as common. 3-day festivals outside of Israel is much more common, much more, much more common than it would ever be here. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. If there are no questions, I'm going to sign out. Do this every
Stay safe.
10 o'clock. Try to do that. Yeah. 10 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time until next we're going to change. This Thursday we're going to change the clocks. So I don't think there'll be so many classes next week, but either way, it's every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, OrthodoxConversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There we got videos and Q&As, ethics of our father, the book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email, RabbiChaimKaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com. Wish you have a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day.